You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the corruption detector, and this is your Red Pill News. Well, guys, today was the day, and what a day it was. Robert Mueller finally testifying before two House committees, Judiciary and Intelligence. It was a car wreck in slow motion. Pretty stunning. Mueller, refused to answer like 123 times. He clearly did not seem to be in charge of his own investigation. He was fumbling. He seemed lost. There was a point at which he even just completely forgot who was asking him questions. It was very painful. It seems like he was just, not there. And it seemed really like I said, he was not in charge of his own investigation. Kind of shocking. But he really didn't do anything in favor of the Dems. He really hurt the Dems, in my opinion. So today is going to be a Robert Mueller testimony special edition. We've got clips of the best moments from our favorite Republican all-stars, just destroying him as he sits there. And we've got lots of more information about specific parts of the testimony. And we're going to start with some of President Trump's live tweeting of this historic event. So sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, and we'll be right back after a brief word from my sponsor. It only takes one major disaster to remind us how fragile life is and our systems are. Recent earthquakes in California have done just that for many people. Life can change in a flash, and all too often it does. When emergencies strike, are you prepared for the days without electricity and stores being damaged or closed? Well, if not, today's a good day to make a plan and prepare for those disasters. I've done this myself, and I started with building a food storage plan. I trust and use My Patriot Supply, and I think you should too. This month, they're running a sale price for a 2-week emergency food kit on my special website, preparewithredpill78.com. You can save 40% when you click the link in the description below and order it today. It gets shipped discreetly to your home. These 2-week emergency food kits include breakfast, lunches, dinners, and they last up to 25 years in storage. Preparing for emergencies with My Patriot Supply is the smart thing to do, and if you do it now, you'll save 40% at preparewithredpill78.com. That's preparewithredpill78.com. All right, so today, at first, President Trump said he wouldn't be watching former special counsel Robert Mueller's testimony before the House about his 22-month investigation into whether the Trump campaign colluded with Russia to alter the outcome of the 2016 presidential election. Well, then he said he might watch a little. But judging from his copious flow of tweets on Twitter, it seems President Trump was raptly watching every minute of the riveting testimony. As House Democrats stuck to some clearly defined talking points in questioning Mueller, Trump sought to pull them apart. So Democrats and others can illegally fabricate a crime, try pinning it on a very innocent president, and when he fights back against this illegal and treasonous attack on our country, they call it obstruction? Wrong. Why didn't Robert Mueller investigate the investigators? Trump wrote on Twitter. Now, Trump also hit the last-minute decision to allow Mueller to have a lawyer sit next to him to advise him on what questions to answer. It was never agreed that Robert Mueller could use one of his many Democrat never-Trumper lawyers to sit next to him and help him with his answers. This was specifically not agreed to, and I would never have agreed to it. The greatest witch hunt in U.S. history by far, he wrote. In another post, Trump blasted Mueller for not investigating Trump-hating FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Why didn't Robert Mueller and his band of 18 angry Democrats spend any time investigating crooked Hillary Clinton, lying and leaking James Comey, Lisa Page and her psycho lover, Peter S., Andy McCabe, the beautiful Orr family, Fusion GPS, and many more, including himself and Andrew W., referring to Andrew Weissman. And Trump questioned why Mueller never probed Hillary Clinton, deleting tens of thousands of emails from a secret server she had in her home, in her bathroom. So why didn't the highly conflicted Robert Mueller investigate how and why crooked Hillary Clinton deleted and acid-washed 33,000 emails immediately after getting a subpoena from the United States Congress? She must have great lawyers. Later, Trump posted a quote from Fox News host Chris Wallace saying Mueller's testimony has been a disaster for the Democrats and a disaster for the reputation of Robert Mueller. The president doesn't leave the White House today until 4 p.m. to head to West Virginia for a campaign event, so expect many, many more tweets. All right, let's go ahead and watch this clip with Chris Wallace talking about Robert Mueller and the decline of his reputation.
Yeah, I had to laugh a little bit when you talked about the testimony by Robert Mueller, because I think testimony has to be put in quotes. It really hasn't been much testimony. Frankly, I think you've both been very kind. I think this has been a disaster for the Democrats, and I think it's been a disaster for the reputation of Robert Mueller. He has seemed very uncertain with his brief. He doesn't seem to know what things that are in the report. He's been attacked a number of times, and you would think that almost anybody else would have defended his own integrity and the integrity of the investigation, and over Mueller just sits silent and allows the attacks from the Republicans to sweep over him and says nothing. I think it does raise questions about the degree to which he actually was in charge of and control of this report, because he doesn't seem very much in control or charge of what the final report was. I should say whether he was in charge of the investigation, because he doesn't seem in charge of what the report actually says.
It begs the question, was Robert Mueller even going to work throughout this almost 2-year investigation? How many times was he showing up in the office? And how many times when he was in the office was he not sitting in his office with the door closed playing Sudoku? Or hangman with himself, or perhaps a few games of solitaire. It seems like he was doing anything but trying to investigate the president. Like, he just let his entire team of Democrats, all those angry Democrats, they did all the investigating, and he said, you just write it up, and I'll put my signature on it, and I'm sure it'll be fine, thinking that he was not going to have to testify, maybe because he thought Jeff Sessions was weak. I don't know. Maybe this is all part of the plan for President Trump. He wanted Robert Mueller to show up here in Congress and just embarrass everyone, embarrass himself, deep six his career and his legacy. Well, if that was the plan, then President Trump has yet another win on his side of the column. Like, he is a genius. This was a horrible thing for the Democrats. They looked so dumb, and Robert Mueller looked even dumber. Now, next, President Trump also commented on the fact that Robert Mueller came in looking for that FBI job the day before he was given the post of special counsel. He said, hope he doesn't say that under oath. Boom. President Trump calls out Robert Mueller for lying about applying for the FBI job. We have numerous witnesses. Robert Mueller could be in big trouble for that statement. Earlier today, as Christina Layla reported this morning, President Trump tweeted out this morning that he has witnesses to Mueller saying that he was there applying for the job as the FBI chief. He said, it has been reported that Robert Mueller is saying that he did not apply and interview for the job of FBI director and get turned down the day before he was wrongfully appointed special counsel. Hope he doesn't say that under oath, in that we have numerous witnesses to the interview, including the Vice President of the United States. But during his testimony today, special counsel Robert Mueller disputed the president's claim that he applied for the job as FBI chief. Special counsel Robert Mueller is disputing President Donald Trump's claim that Mueller was rebuffed in a bid to fill the post as FBI director. Facing questions from congressional lawmakers, Mueller said he spoke with Trump about the FBI job before he was named a special counsel, but not as a candidate. Then White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon has said that while the White House invited Mueller to speak to the president about the FBI and thought about asking him to become director again, Mueller did not come in looking for a job. But Trump tweeted Wednesday that there are numerous witnesses, including Vice President Mike Pence, who could say that Mueller applied and interviewed for the job and was turned down for it. This could be devastating for Mueller. It could be awful if he ended up in isolation on Rikers Island. I think that it would be just desserts if that that's the case, if that's what ends up happening to Robert Mueller. Now, I have no doubt in my mind that the Republicans on these committees are going to band together. They're going to search for any spot where Robert Mueller could have potentially committed perjury, and they're going to make recommendations for him to be brought up on charges. Because if that's the case, I just have to say he deserves it, especially considering what him and his team did to several people in President Trump's camp. The only thing is that Mueller has nothing to deal with, or does he? If he is brought up on charges and he's looking at prison term, does that mean that he's going to be willing to talk about his former handlers, all the people in these former failed administrations, the deep state presidents who he served under in the past? I don't know. It's a pretty interesting question, and I certainly hope that Jim Jordan and Ratcliffe and all of his buddies there, Nunes, I hope that they all get together and they all bring referrals up for Robert Mueller on perjury charges. Now, speaking of Jim Jordan, here is the first of several clips put together by my good friend and fellow researcher Methods, and he says that Jim Jordan boom. That's right, Jim Jordan knows what to do and how to do it. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what Jim had to say to former FBI Director and Special Counsel lead investigator Robert Mueller.
Maybe a better course of action is to figure out how the false accusation started. Maybe it's to go back and actually figure out why Joseph Mifsud was lying to the FBI. And here's the good news. That's exactly what Bill Barr's doing. And thank goodness for that. That's exactly what the Attorney General and John Durham are doing. They're going to find out why we went through this three-year saga and get to the bottom of it.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Now, is it just me, or does Robert Mueller look like he's just slightly smiling when Jim Jordan said that about Joseph Mifsud? Let's take a closer look. Yeah, look, slightly upturning the corners of his mouth. Yeah, right there. Looks like he's holding back a smile. It's just the slightest thing. Robert Mueller has, a pretty low affectation level, doesn't show too much emotion. But at the beginning there, when he was blinking, the way that he was putting his head down as Jim Jordan was saying it, I think that Robert Mueller was smiling just a little bit. Just the slightest touch of a smile. Right there. There you go, Robert. Smile. Let's go ahead and listen to it from the point where Jim Jordan says that and he begins to smile.
Here's the good news. That's exactly what Bill Barr's doing. And thank goodness for that. That's exactly what the Attorney General and John Durham are doing. They're going to find out why we went through this three-year saga and get to the bottom of it.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
That is exactly what Bill Barr is doing. Now, Robert Mueller, like I said, this was bad for the Democrats, and it was bad for Robert Mueller. But he just fell apart up there on the stand at that table in front of those committees. He seemed like he was caught off guard. He was mumbling, he was bumbling, he was stuttering, he was confused, he was doddering, he was nervous, completely lost. Special Counsel Robert Mueller testified before the House Judiciary Committee on Wednesday morning. And like I said, he looked confused, he was stuttering, he was agreeable, lost, and nervous, and just a doddering old man. He frequently paged through his notes. He just looked weak. Now, there is no way that Mueller ran this investigation. This was all Andrew Weissman, and this witch hunt was blessed by Rod Rosenstein, they are saying, and the corrupt Department of Justice. This was a criminal attempt to remove a sitting president from office. Oh my God, Mueller completely falls apart during House hearing. During questioning by Representative Jackson Lee, he was completely lost. Could you repeat the question? Let's go ahead and take a listen.
I have on the screen.
Is that correct on the screen?
Can you repeat the question? And now that I have the language on the screen.
Is it correct, as you further elaborate, obstruction of justice can be motivated by a direct desire to protect non-criminal personal interests, to protect against investigations where underlying criminal liability falls into a gray area, or to avoid? Is that true?
Yes.
And is it true that the impact... Pardon?
Can you read the last question?
The last question was...
I want to make certain I got it accurate.
No, the last question was the language on the screen asking you if that's correct.
Yes.
Okay. Does a conviction of obstruction of justice result potentially in a lot of years of time in jail?
Yes. Well, again, can you repeat the question just to make sure that I have it accurate?
Does obstruction of justice warrant a lot of time in jail
Yes.
if you were convicted?
Yes.
And is
Time of the gentlelady is expired.
That was probably the worst one. Robert, it's on the screen. Is this the correct definition of obstruction of justice? Can you repeat the question? Oh my goodness, what a horror show. It was awful. It was so painful to watch, but yet at the same time just so satisfying. All right, next we have a clip showing Representative John Ratcliffe basically telling Robert Mueller that he's a bad attorney. Maybe he needs to go back to law school. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
Your report, the very first line of your report says, and as you read this morning, it authorizes the special counsel to provide the Attorney General with a confidential report explaining the prosecution or declination decisions reached by the special counsel. That's the very first word of your report, right?
That's correct.
Here's the problem, Director. The special counsel didn't do that. On volume 1, you did. On volume 2, with respect to potential obstruction of justice, the special counsel made neither a prosecution decision or a declination decision. You made no decision. You told us this morning and in your report that you made no determination. So respectfully, Director, you didn't follow the special counsel regulations. It clearly says, write a confidential report about decisions reached. Nowhere in here does it say, write a report about decisions that weren't reached. You wrote 180 pages. 180 pages about decisions that weren't reached, about potential crimes that weren't charged or decided. And respectfully, by doing that, you managed to violate every principle and the most sacred of traditions about prosecutors not offering extra prosecutorial analysis about potential crimes that aren't charged. So Americans need to know this as they listen to the Democrats and socialists on the other side of the aisle, as they do dramatic readings from this report, that volume 2 of this report was not authorized under the law to be written. It was written to a legal standard that does not exist at the Justice Department. And it was written in violation of every DOJ principle about extra prosecutorial commentary. I agree with the chairman this morning when he said Donald Trump is not above the law. He's not. But he damn sure shouldn't be below the law, which is where volume 2 of this report puts him.
Oh, just an incredible monologue from John Ratcliffe. Really gave it to Robert Mueller there. Robert Mueller looked ashamed in that clip. I think he knows exactly what Ratcliffe is talking about, and he knows the kind of deep doo-doo that he's in as a result of this. He has created this firestorm, and if it wasn't him, if it was people on his team, he is complicit in allowing it. Oh man, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Robert Mueller. He just appears to be just absolutely lost. And I just love this woman in the back here with that smirk on her face. She's like, yep, the whole time. Everything John Ratcliffe is saying, she's like, yeah, he's right. He's totally right. Robert Mueller did not follow any of the statutes that he was meant to. None of the rules in the special counsel regulations. He put forward a bunch of nonsense that was unnecessary and was absolutely unfair to President Trump. But thank God he did not do anything to help the Democrats today. If anything, he hurt them just so incredibly. Now, Trey Gowdy is weighing in, and he said he didn't want to come, and now we know why he didn't want to come. Special counsel Robert Mueller testified before the House Judiciary Committee on Wednesday morning. It was a slow-motion train wreck. Former Oversight Committee Chairman Trey Gowdy had this to say about today's performance by Robert Mueller. He said, he said he didn't want to come, and now we know why. Gowdy thought Mueller's testimony was so conflicted and embarrassing. He added that he would not be surprised if Democrats wanted to cancel the afternoon hearing. It was a devastating performance for the deep state frontman. Let's go ahead and listen to Trey Gowdy's analysis.
Oversight Committee Chairman and Fox News contributor Trey Gowdy, and of course Chris Wallace and Fox News Sunday. Mr. Chairman, your thoughts on the day?
Well, he said he didn't want to come, and now we know why he didn't want to come. I don't think the report should have been made public. I don't think he should have testified. Prosecutors don't engage in these collateral consequences like impeachment. You either indict or you shut up. The three main takeaways for me: Johnny Ratcliffe discussing the flipping of the burden. I mean, even the president is presumed innocent. So he's not above the law, which was the Democrat mantra, but he's also not beneath the law. Kenny Buck, another former federal prosecutor, said if you can reach a conclusion on conspiracy and collusion and say no indictment, then why couldn't you do it on obstruction? So the big takeaway to me was the Democrats wanted this to fuel their impeachment narrative, and I'll bet you if they could cancel this afternoon's HIPC hearing, they would.
Chris.
Yeah, it was so embarrassing, but you gotta love it, you guys. This was better than I could have hoped. Now, Matt Gaetz also gave a stunning performance, and as Method says right here, he was not playing games. Let's go ahead and take a listen to this exchange.
Do you have any basis as you sit here today to believe that Steele was lying?
As I said before, and I'll say again, it's not my purview. Others are investigating what you
So it's not your purview to look into whether or not Steele's lying. It's not your purview to look into whether or not anti-Trump Russians are lying to Steele. And it's not your purview to look at whether or not Glenn Simpson was meeting with the Russians the day before and the day after you write 3,500 words about the Trump campaign meeting. So I'm wondering how these decisions are guided. I look at the Inspector General's report. I'm citing from page 404 of the Inspector General's report. It states, Page stated, Trump's not ever going to be president, right? Right. Strzok replied, no, he's not. We'll stop it. Also in the Inspector General's report, there's someone identified as attorney number two. Attorney number two, this is page 419, replied, hell no, and then added, viva la resistance. Attorney number two in the Inspector General's report and Strzok both worked on your team, didn't they?
Pardon me? Can you ask?
They both worked on your team, didn't they?
I know. I heard Strzok. Who else were you talking about?
Attorney number two identified in the Inspector General's report.
Okay. And the question was?
Did he work for you? The guy who said viva la resistance.
Peter Strzok worked for me for a period of time, yes.
Yeah, but so did the other guy that said viva la resistance. And here's what I'm kind of noticing, Director Mueller. When people associated with Trump lied, you threw the book at him. When Christopher Steele lied, nothing. And so it seems to be that when Glenn Simpson met with Russians, nothing. When the Trump campaign met with Russians, 3,500 words. And maybe the reason why there are this discrepancies in what you focused on is because the team was so biased.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Pledged to stop Trump.
Jeffries of New York is recognized.
Mueller had no idea who attorney number two was. I can't believe how confused he was. The more that I watched it, just the more bizarre that it got. You guys, this was truly an historic event in the history of our nation. And it just goes to show the ludicrous nature of this investigation. Oh, and as I said earlier, slow motion train wreck. Representative Debbie Lesko just absolutely destroyed Mueller today with her questioning. He gave several contradictory statements, and Mueller completely lost. Representative McClintock grilled Special Counsel Robert Mueller on his several contradictory statements from his report to his testimony on Wednesday to Congress, and McClintock pointed out that Mueller and his gang of angry Democrats cited the Washington Post 60 times, the New York Times 55 times, and Fox News about 25 times. Representative Debbie Lesko said, I've got to say, it looks like Volume 2 is regurgitated press stories. Honestly, there is almost nothing in Volume 2 that I didn't already hear or know simply by having a $50 cable subscription. Oh, this was the ultimate pinnacle of a Democratic wrap-up smear. They used the press stories, which were just leaks handed out to them by people on Mueller's team, people in the former administration, holdovers from that former administration, and then Mueller and his team, Andrew Weissman namely, tried to use them to legitimize all of these false claims against the president. Let's go ahead and listen to this exchange between Representative Debbie Lesko and Robert Mueller.
Mr. Chairman, just recently, Mr. Mueller, you said Mr. Liu was asking you questions. And Mr. Liu's question, I quote, "The reason you didn't indict the president is because of the OLC opinion." And you answered, "That is correct." But that is not what you said in the report, and it's not what you told Attorney General Barr. And in fact, in a joint statement that you released with DOJ on May 29th, after your press conference, your office issued a joint statement with the Department of Justice that said, "The Attorney General has previously stated that the special counsel repeatedly affirmed that he was not saying that but for the OLC opinion, he would have found the president obstructed justice. The special counsel's report and his statement today made clear that the office concluded it would not reach a determination one way or the other whether the president committed a crime. There is no conflict between these statements." So, Mr. Mueller, do you stand by your joint statement with DOJ that you issued on May 29th as you sit here today?
I would have to look at it more closely before I said I agree with it.
Well, my conclusion is that what you told Mr. Liu really contradicts what you said in the report, and specifically what you said apparently repeatedly to Attorney General Barr, and then you issued a joint statement on May 29th saying that the Attorney General has previously stated that the special counsel repeatedly affirmed that he was not saying but for the OLC report that we would have found the president obstructed justice. So I just say there's a conflict. I do have some more questions. Mr. Mueller, there's been a lot of talk today about firing the special counsel and curtailing the investigation. Were you ever fired, Mr. Mueller? Were you ever fired as special counsel, Mr. Mueller?
No.
No. Were you allowed to complete your investigation unencumbered?
Yes.
And in fact, you resigned as special counsel when you closed up the office in late May 2019. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Mr. Mueller, on April 18th, the Attorney General held a press conference in conjunction with the public release of your report. Mr. Mueller, rather than purely relying on the evidence provided by witnesses and documents, I think you relied a lot on media. I'd like to know how many times you cited the Washington Post in your report.
How many times I what?
Cited the Washington Post in your report.
I do not have knowledge of that figure, but that's it. I don't have knowledge of that figure.
I counted about 60 times. How many times did you cite the New York Times? I counted.
Again, I have no idea.
I counted about 5 times. How many times did you cite Fox News?
As with the other two, I have no idea.
About 25 times. I've got to say, it looks like Volume 2 is mostly regurgitated press stories. Honestly, there's almost nothing in Volume 2 that I couldn't already hear or know simply by having a $50 cable news subscription. However, your investigation cost the American taxpayers $25 million.
Did you see her face? And then the guy's face behind him? Oh, he was like, make it stop. Make it stop. This is so bad. I know how bad this is. Oh, my goodness. Oh, so painful. All right, next, here is that bit with McClintock dismantling Mueller on the Russian troll farm claims, and he accused him of leaving flaming bag of feces on America's porch. Representative Tom McClintock took special counsel Robert Mueller to task on his claims about the Russian troll farms being run by the Kremlin and saying that this report was a flaming bag of feces. Let's go ahead and take a listen to this clip.
It describes your office as the team of partisans. And as additional information is coming to light, there's a growing concern that political bias caused important facts to be omitted from your report in order to cast the president unfairly in a negative light. For example, John Dowd, the president's lawyer, leaves a message with Michael Flynn's lawyer on November 17th of 2017, November 2017. The edited version in your report makes it appear that he was improperly asking for confidential information, and that's all we'd know from your report, except that the judge in the Flynn case ordered the entire transcript released, in which Dowd makes it crystal clear that's not what he was suggesting. So my question is, why did you edit the transcript to hide the exculpatory part of the message?
Well, I'm not certain I would agree with your characterization as we did anything to hide.
Well, you omitted it. You quoted the part where he says we need some kind of heads up just for the sake of protecting all of our interests if we can, but you omitted the portion where he says without giving up any confidential information.
Well, I'm not going to go further in terms of discussing the...
well, let's go on. You extensively discussed Konstantin Kilimnik's activities with Paul Manafort. You describe him as, quote, a Russian-Ukrainian political consultant and longtime employee of Paul Manafort, assessed by the FBI to have ties to Russian intelligence. And again, that's all we know from your report, except we've since learned from news articles that Kilimnik was actually a U.S. State Department intelligence source, yet nowhere in your report is he so identified. Why was that fact?
I don't necessarily credit what you're saying occurred.
Were you aware that Kilimnik was
I'm not going to go into the ins and outs. I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of what we had in the course of our investigation.
Did you interview Konstantin Kilimnik?
Pardon?
Did you interview Konstantin Kilimnik?
I can't go into the discussion of our investigative moves.
And yet that is the basis of your report. Again, the problem we're having is we have to rely on your report for an accurate reflection of the evidence, and we're starting to find out that's not true. For example, the fundamental problem is that, as I said, we've got to take your word. Your team faithfully, accurately, impartially, and completely described all of the underlying evidence in the Mueller report, and we're finding more and more instances where this just isn't the case. And it's starting to look like, having desperately tried and failed to make a legal case against the president, you made a political case instead. You put it in a paper sack, lit it on fire, dropped it on our porch, rang the doorbell, and ran.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's the truth. He did try to make a political case because he could not make a criminal case. Just absolutely incredible. Now, with regard to the criminal contempt, earlier this month, Dabney Friedrich, a Trump-appointed federal judge, rebuked Robert Mueller and the DOJ for falsely suggesting that the Internet Research Agency and Concord Management and Company, the so-called Russian troll farms, were linked to the Russian government. Mueller's core claim that the Russian government interfered in the 2016 U.S. presidential election in a sweeping and systematic fashion revolves around this bogus claim that a Russian bot farm was linked to the Kremlin. Now, this is a core claim that has never even been proven. Judge Friedrich wrote in a memo that the special counsel report describes efforts by the Russian government to interfere with the 2016 presidential election. But the indictment, which alleges that private Russian entities and individuals conducted an information warfare campaign designed to sow discord among U.S. voters, Indictment 10, it does not link the defendants to the Russian government. Now, save for a single allegation that Concord and Concord Catering had several government contracts with no further elaboration, the indictment alleges only private conduct by private actors, Friedrich continued. During the hearing on Wednesday, McClintock demanded to know how Mueller could claim that the IRA was linked to the Kremlin without any evidence, and noted that he and U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr were nearly held in criminal contempt over it. Why did you say that Russia was responsible for the troll farms, but give no evidence of this, McClintock demanded. He also asked if the press conference held by Mueller had anything to do with that fact and the previous day. And of course, Mueller claimed that it did not. But I think the timing is a little too coincidental. All right. This has been a good episode, you guys. We've got one more clip from my good friend Methods. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a look at one final clip from Methods. This is a supercut of Mueller's impeccable listening skills throughout many of the hearings and their questions. It's just a perfect encapsulation of Mueller's lack of focus, lack of concentration, and inability to listen to the questions that he is being asked, perhaps because he knows that he can't answer them, so he's stalling for time. Let's go ahead and take a look.
The president committed the crime of obstruction. You could not publicly state that in your report or here today.
Can you repeat the question, sir? You're going to have to repeat that for me. Can you repeat the last part of that question?
Yeah. Which?
Pardon?
Can you read the last question?
The last question was
I want to make certain I got it accurate. I'm sorry, could you restate?
The individual is in fact obligated to provide what's being demanded by the regulation or statute, meaning you don't have any wiggle room, right?
I'd have to look more closely at the statute.
Well, I just read it to you.
And what was the question, sir, if I might?
Correct.
And where are you reading from on that?
I'm reading from my question.
Then could you repeat it?
Okay. Is that correct on the screen?
Can you repeat the question? And now that I have the language on the screen.
Is it correct?
What was the question?
Pardon?
Can you read the last question?
The last question was,
I want to make certain I got it accurate.
Attorney number 2 in the Inspector General's report and Strzok both worked on your team, didn't they?
Pardon me? Can you ask?
They both worked on your team, didn't they?
I know. I heard Strzok. Who else were you talking about?
Attorney number 2 identified in the Inspector General's report.
Okay. And the question was?
Volume 2, page 87 and 88 of your report. True?
I'm sorry. Could you again repeat the question?
Now, when all was said and done, at the end of the day, Donald J. Trump, of course, in classic form, had something to say about the matter. So let's take a look at this clip here that Methods got, and we'll get a bit of an insight into what Donald Trump is thinking and where this is going to go.
Well, Mueller had no material. Sure, Mueller had no material to work with, and he did a horrible job. Obviously, his presentation was way off, but that's okay. It didn't matter. He had no material. There was nothing done wrong. In fact, things were done right. There was nothing done wrong. And certainly, I mean, look, I read the papers and I read the press and I read the internet. And if you see what's going on the internet, if you listen to the internet, this was one of the worst performances in the history of our country. So you know that very well. But I don't think anybody could have done a good performance. He had no material. It was a fake set of facts that the Democrats used and others to try and do really an illegal overthrow. But we're going to find out about that.
That's right. President Donald Trump pointing once again to the fact that this was nothing but an illegal attempt to position a coup within the United States to remove a duly elected president. And now that it's all said and done, we're ready for the next phase of the operation, which is the legal takedown of those who plotted the coup. You guys better watch out. Traitors, be ready. All right, guys, as I said, just an incredibly painful set of hearings. Robert Mueller did not appear to have been in control of his own investigation. I believe this was all completely headed up by Andrew Weissman, the so-called bulldog, and the team of angry Democrats. And perhaps Robert Mueller did that so that he could allow them to crash and burn and completely incriminate themselves in every aspect of the investigation. Doesn't know statutes, doesn't know the rules, doesn't understand when people are talking to him. Robert Mueller, it's time to check yourself into a home and just subsist for your final days on cottage cheese and applesauce. All right, folks, that is all that I have for you today. I want to thank everyone for joining me. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this was your Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless.